Hello, I've decided to do a series of videos about how to create this kind of thing using CD or USB or DVD-ROM based card kits. So the sort of thing where you print out some sheets and you turn it into a card. Now obviously I've added my own foiling. So I've got some examples and I'm recording this, and this is going to be an introduction, and it's an introduction to the whole series. So for each one, people really need to watch this particular introduction, even if this isn't the card they're making. So I've got this card, and I've used CDs from Creators Crafters World, and I've got some that are from Debbie Moore, and I've also got some from Hunkydory. So I've got a set of kits. Now this card started off with some pages, this sort of thing printed out. And I was trying to sort of be frugal and use as few pages as possible, and I made life difficult for myself. So I'm going to take a slightly different tack with this one. But let me show you kind of where we're going. So, in this card, I've got all the bits here that I actually cut it from. So I had this sheet that had two versions of the topper on, and then I've cut various bits out of them. And I've only got that bit left, really. There was another bit down here that I actually used to make the sentiment from, because you can use the back of your card. So I foiled the frame piece and my sentiment. You see, that was the back of it, so you don't need to waste your bits of card. They come in handy, and I've got some of that left. So it didn't take a lot of bits of card to do it, but I think I've ended up with a great result. I think you'd think that'd come from a pre-formed kit. Now you're thinking, well, you know, what foiling dies and things are you using? And the answer is I'm not. I'm using my normal cutting dies. I'm using nesting die sets. So I'm going to quickly show you the varieties that I'm going to demonstrate with, and there will be a separate video for each card. So I've got, I already showed you, I'm going to be making something that will be a topper, something like that, a card like that, with this. And this is some Pollyanna Pickering artwork. This is her, which one is it? Majestic Cats? Majestic Moggies? Can't remember quite what it's called. I'll make sure I put the details in the video about this card. And then the pheasant I've just shown you is a Bree Merryn one, and again it's a Creative Crafters World DVD. And then I'm going to do this lovely fox, which is also on that same CD, and I've got some papers printed out, nice large sheets to cut from. And then down here I've also got, from a Hunkydory at Home USB, and I've got my toppers and a variety of papers from that collection. And then I've also got, because I wanted to make sure I picked up a variety of things, I've got Debbie Moore Vintage Botanical in a Shabby Chic Collection. So I've got one of the topper sheets, and I've got that paper, or that paper, because I printed on both sides of my card to actually mat and layer it with. I might bring in some pink card as well for that one, so because you can bring in some plain cardstock or other pattern papers that you've got. So that's where I'm going with this series of videos. Okay, now I do think it's quite important to understand the process that we're using. Let me pop those to one side. Oh, and you can do these kind of things, you know, if you've just got a topper pad, you know, you can do your own foiling. Let me put that to one side. So I'm using just normal sets of nesting dies. Okay, now I've pulled these two out of my collection. I'm going to show you my collection in a minute. Well, show you the size of it. So I've been crafting a few years, not a great many years, but I've collected quite a lot of different nesting dies. So some are plain shapes and some are fancy shapes, and I've got fancy ovals, plain ovals, circles, different types of rectangles, and hearts, you name it. I've probably got it. So I've got quite a selection, but I didn't want to get too complicated. Now my square dies I bought when I first started crafting a few years ago, and I bought them from Create and Craft, and the brand are no longer available, but they are just square nesting dies. They're a nice quality die. Let me pick one up, and the important thing is, let me get the camera to focus. You can see where the cut line is compared with the frame of the die. It's nicely in the middle, and there's a nice gap either side of the cut line. Okay, and that's important because the distance from the cut line to the inside edge will be the width of your foiled line. Okay, and it works best if the cut line is in the middle. Okay, and as I say, it's a nice quality die, so I seem to get good results from these. The other set I've got, and I have got other brands of fancy dies as well, are Hunkydory Moonstone dies. This is one of their sets, and again you can see the cut line is in the middle, and you've got that nice distance either side. Okay, I've got other brands. That one's a brand called Just Right, and you can see follows the same kind of pattern, and again it's quite a sturdy die. Okay, now I have got some dies that are much thinner rimmed. Can't get it to focus. Let me try like that. That's better. So you can see it's got the cut line. It's only got a thin rim, and you could use that, but you'd only get a very thin line of foiling once you cut it out, because that's what you do. You use the back of the die to foil like this, and I've got some other bits I did yesterday because they were like a test run. I got them in that bowl. There. Sorry about that. Right, so these are some test runs I did for my pheasant card, and you can see it's foiled very nicely around the edge, and then you cut it out and you end up with a line half the thickness that's foiled. Okay, now I think it's quite important to test out the foils you're planning to use with this technique, because I did do a test earlier using one foil I was going to use, and it didn't transfer terribly well. Let me just bring that in a bit. Now you can see I've got bits of foil missing in one corner, and I did try, reheating it up again and rolling it again, and it just wasn't going to have it. So I decided I'd use some different foil, and after I've done a smaller test, I've done that, and this is with Coutry Creations gold foil, and that's foiled really beautifully. So I'm going to stick with using that foil for what I'm doing here. So, and as I say, and then when you cut it out, I'll bring this back. When you cut it, so you can imagine I foiled with the back of my die this piece here, and then I've cut it out, obviously before everything's stuck down, cut it out, and it's left me with that foiled edge. So I'm sure you've got some nesting dies in your crafting stash. I did say I'd show you my collection, so let me do that before I go any further, and then I think that'll be enough for this introduction. I need to get on with making the next card. So those to one side. Just bear with me a moment. Might have to move the camera back actually. Right, are you ready? So I've had to move the camera because I've got my dies in some nice big ring binders. This is one of 5. So this is my binder for my nesting dies. So obviously you're not going to see them all, but you can see I've got a huge collection of nesting dies. Maybe people have got more. They're all different brands. So I've got thin ones, I've got ones with thicker edge, one with more in them than others. So different types of circles, and fancy shapes, elongated rectangles. You know, you get the idea of that. That's where the ones I've got out are normally stored. I've got stitched ones. So as I say, I've got all sorts of makes and shapes, and so long as it's a die that you can turn it over and it's the same shape, then you can have a go at doing this. Now even plain rectangles will give you a foiled edge. So there we are. So you can see, as I say, this is just my nesting dies, and it's just my nesting die sets. So I've got other small dies and maybe very small sets in other folders. So think about what nesting dies you've got in your collection. Okay, so you're thinking about, bring the camera back. So have a think about all those frame die sets. They're called nesting die sets because they nest one inside another. Okay, and it means if you're using a nesting die set, then you can get consistency in your design, so because you can repeat the shapes, or you can do as I did and do a fancy one and a plain one and alternate and that kind of thing. Okay, so I'm going to put the actual foiling technique in the individual videos because I think people will need that in the actual video about making the card. So that's my introduction to what I'm doing. So carry on watching the various cards and you'll see the ideas that I use.